Hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing good today and I hope everyone is ready for our final exam. And now I'm going to review what we have been doing from the beginning of the semester up to, up to this week, when we are going to have the last part of our course, which is the the big quiz. And now, when we want to review what we have been doing throughout this semester, we have to start, of course, with the definition of this course, inferential reading. What does it mean to infer? Now, I'm going to use the definition of inference from Israel Chikalange, a professor in Zambia who theorized the taxonomy of inferential reading. According to Chikalange, inferential reading is the cognitive process a reader goes through to obtain the implicit meaning of a written text. And how does the person do that? It's doing it on the basis of two sources of information. The first one is the content of the text, and the second one is the prior knowledge of the reader. So these two are very important in doing inferential reading. And when it gets to the purposes of this course, the first one is, of course, to build your literacy. And by literacy here, I'm referring to the ability to write and read and use the results of these two to improve your quality of life. So it has to be related to reading and writing, and then eventually using it, utilizing it to improve our life. And the second purpose is to develop critical skills. And the last one is to provide the basis for approaching literature. And it is very useful for you as you are literature students. And because of these three elements, then I divided this class into 3 units. The first unit is on the taxonomy of inferential reading. Here we talk about the theories, the fundamental theories of inferential reading. The second one is on the elements of arguments. And the third one, it will be on inferring literature. Now, these 3 are related to the 3 purposes of this course. Let's get to the first one, which is the taxonomy of inferential reading. In this unit, we studied about 3 types of questions that you can pose to get inferential meanings from the text. These 3 types of questions you will pose in order for you to understand the text as deep as possible. The deeper your questions are, the deeper information you will get from the text. The first type of the question is what we call the lexical question. Lexical question is related to the meaning of a word, a phrase, a sentence. And you ask this question to get better understanding, to avoid ambiguity, to really know the meaning of something that is not clear. And the second one is what we call the group of propositional questions. These propositional questions are questions that you pose to get something that is actually present in the text but not very explicit. Okay? And the third one is the pragmatic questions. You ask pragmatic questions to get something from the text that is very, very vaguely presented. It's not very explicit, but there is an indication to there. Now, when you ask these types of questions, there are certain things that you need to understand. The first one, when you ask lexical questions, you will get things or information that are not actually present in the text, or sometimes that are present in the text. Some texts have difficult words, but then the difficult words are explained in them. But some other texts do not have the explanation for difficult words or phrases or sentences. So eventually you will have to go to a dictionary. That's for lexical question. As for the propositional questions, the information is there, okay? You will get the answer from the text itself. However, when we go to the pragmatic questions, you do not actually find the answer from inside the text. You will have to go to other sources to answer such question. Now, about the lexical and propositional questions, what are the purposes of these questions? So, the most important thing about this type of question is that it helps you summarize the text accurately, and it enables you to retell the story in your own ways, in your own words. And the third one is it will give you a strong foundation to further analyze the text. And the third one, and the pragmatic questions, you will be able to relate what you know in the text to your own knowledge, your own experience, what you have learned everywhere else. And it will also make the text more meaningful. Sometimes the text on the surface doesn't offer much, but if you go deeper, you will make it more meaningful. You can relate it to other things in life. And finally, it will give further responses to the text. Well, of course, with the foundation that you got from the propositional and lexical questions. Let's move on to the second unit. And the second unit was mostly about the elements of arguments. The first part of this unit was for a definition of argument. What is actually an argument? So in this course, by argument, I'm referring to three meanings, okay? The first one is the general meaning. It's a statement of opinion. Everything is an argument. If you propose something, it is an argument. It can be written, it can be spoken, it can be shown, visual, displayed. And the second meaning is, it is a type of writing. We call it also the argumentative essay or argumentative writing. So the second meaning of argument is here quite specific and technical. And the third one is the summary of a plot or a story and what the story wants to tell you, or the message from a story. That is also an argument, and we use this in literature. Sometimes we also call it theme. Again, the third one is the theme of an essay. The theme of a short story. That is also an argument. So there are three meanings of argument that we used in this course. But for this unit, we will be talking mostly about the general and the argumentative meaning of argument. Now, in this unit, we also learned to infer arguments from the text, okay? We believe that every text has an argument. Sometimes the argument is explicit, sometimes it's implicit. And no matter what happens, we always need to find the argument in a text so that we know what the text wants to tell us. And that is the first one. The second one was we try to identify whether an argument in a text is complete or not. How do we know that? We used three elements of an argument here to understand whether a text or whether an argument is complete or not. An argument that is complete needs to have a claim, evidence, and warrant. A claim is something that the writer proposes. The evidence is something that the writer proposes to support the claim. And the warrant is an explanation that makes the evidence relevant to the claim. So with these three things, we will have a complete argument. Right. Now, when we want to infer arguments from a text, there are three steps that we need to consider. Okay, the first one is to identify the main idea, to identify the main argument of a text. And then we also try to go deeper by trying to find the basic assumptions of the writer. Basic assumptions here refers to what the writer believes or the laws that the writer holds in proposing his argument. And the second one in inferring deeper was the motive or the purpose of the writer in writing that. It is always important for us to identify what is actually the motive behind the writer's writing that piece. Most of the time, the motive is not clear. However, it is a must for us as critical readers to know what is the background of all this. If the writer doesn't really explicitly say what the purpose is in writing the text, we need to discover it. We need to identify it, and of course, we need to identify it with the help of other elements of the text. And the third one, in a word of fake news or during the post-truth era, it is very important for us to identify the hidden motive of the writer. Sometimes the writer says that he or she wants to propose this, while if we look deeper, there might be hidden motive behind all this. And it is important for us to discover what is the hidden motive of a writer. Doing so, we will not be fooled easily by fake news, by hoaxes, and by something evil that we read, especially in maybe WhatsApp groups or in other media that we see on a daily basis. And the last one is inferring literary works, which for this year, unfortunately, we could only cover prose. And when we try to infer literary works, here for our class, I focus on mostly summarizing the story in hope that when you are able to summarize the story, you will know the message that the story wants to tell you. And the message that the story wants to tell you is what we call the theme. However, identifying that alone is not enough. We have to be able to support our interpretation, what we consider the theme, with other parts of the text. And what are they? It's the character's attitude. It's the story's attitude, the purpose of the story. And one thing missing over here is that you also need the tone of the story in order to strengthen your interpretation of the theme. If you say that the theme is A, then you need to be able to find other elements of the text that help you to convince your readers that yes, the text actually wants to say this. And those elements are, one of them is the tone. Alright, now what is tone again? Tone is actually the attitude of the writer towards the subject of to the audience. And usually when we talk about tones here, it describes the kind of attitude of the writer. When do you actually need to use this inferential reading skills? Are you going to use them? Well, actually, for English students like you are, this skill will always be useful for you throughout your studies in the university. You will need inferential reading skills when you are in your writing courses. When you write something, you need to get ideas by reading, right? And it is impossible to only read without being critical towards what you read. So that's where the inferential reading will be useful. And in your introduction to literature class, you will need it because in that class, you learn to infer the theme and infer other elements from the text. And later on, if you go deeper into your concentration, those who are in, say, entrepreneurship for language students, you will also learn to write copies for advertisements, for example. You will need these critical reading skills in presenting your ideas. You will get sources from everywhere, sometimes magazines, sometimes newspapers, sometimes images, and then you analyze them, and eventually you will use them in your copies, in what you write. And if you are in the tourism concentration, there will be a course or there will be a lesson of writing hotel reviews. How do you write reviews? You do that by either visiting a hotel or reading information about a hotel from a website, from brochures, from other parts. And that's where you will need your critical reading skills. And for this course, so far, what we have learned is that there are several things. The first one is everything is an argument. And not every argument is explicit. And every writer has a belief or ideology that might not be very clear. We have to be able to infer the ideology of the writer, or what we call the basic assumption of a writer. And also you will need to consider a hidden motive of everything that you see. Alright, so far have you tried your inferential reading skills outside class? That's a challenge for you. You will need to be able to practice this skill on daily basis, on everything that you do or you see outside. And with that, I guess we need to end this review. Hopefully you can do the exam very well next week, and you can still find what you learn in this course useful in the future. Thank you very much.